Hey everyone, I hope all is well today. Again, thanks for joining. My name is Ryan. I work here at Crow Canyon. I ran a poll, as I was kind of getting ready and prepped on my side about what version of SharePoint we're on. So I saw some responses in terms of online as well as on-prem. I'll definitely be talking about both of those today. So I appreciate you guys participating in the poll. I was just trying to gauge an idea of what exactly we were going to be or kind of how I wanted to frame the conversation, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So, again, thanks, guys. I'm going to give people a few minutes here to kind of trickle in before I actually start showing the program. Let us kind of get set and get comfortable here. And while I'm doing that, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about Crow Canyon, who we are as a company, what we do, what we're about, and then I'll hop into it. It seems like we got some folks trickling in. So yeah, again, for those who kind of missed the little intro there, my name's Ryan. I'm going to be walking us through the asset management application today, Crow Canyon. So we have two kind of core concepts of our business that are a little intertwined, but let me talk about them in a little bit more detail here. So we have our out-of-the-box applications for SharePoint on-premise and SharePoint online, right? We're covering one of those today in asset management. The other side, well, let me take a step here. We've been, working with SharePoint really since its inception. We started as a company in 1999 as an Outlook public folders help desk, and have been working on SharePoint for quite some time. And now our focus is strictly inside of either SharePoint on-premise or Office 365. The out-of-the-box applications reflect that. The other side of what we do is our Nitro Studio. So Nitro Studio is our application creation suite, what we use to build our tools. Forms, workflows, those are really the flagship. They get the most love because whenever we talk about dealing with the list item, it's like, what's the form associated with it? What's the workflows? We'll cover those a lot in depth today as we work through the application. There's also other pieces that I think are pretty cool that we're going to touch on throughout the presentation in terms of like how information is displayed on dashboards in terms of reports or tiles, list view web parts, search features, branding, kind of everything that we typically use inside of our own applications is this Nitro Studio. So that also can be offered as a standalone. It's an info path replacement tool. That's the intention of Nitro Studio as a standalone, as a DIY. Take it, replicate your info path forms, build your own business processes inside of your SharePoint environment leveraging Nitro Studio. Super cool tool. Also some hooks into Microsoft Teams. We are very advanced in the bot space as well within Teams. So if you're interested in that side, outside of the applications, let us know too. That's a whole nother side of our business. But what I'm getting to, it's just a really long-winded way to say the applications come a certain way out of the box, but they sit on this really cool tool set, so we can make changes to the application after the fact. And you'll see that as we work our way through the demo today, is that we have a lot of different use cases for asset tracking. So what I'm showing now is our different applications, right? So IT help desk, asset tracking, the two are connected, right? Work order tracking, purchase request, contract management. The idea being these are all standalone applications, or they can be working in conjunction with each other. When a purchase request is submitted, I want to have that, or when it's approved and I receive the goods, I wanted to have it automatically create an asset in the asset tracking system. I want to tie tickets to an asset, right? That functionality is there. We're going to be focusing just on assets today, but do know that keep that in mind as we move forward. If you're looking for to replicate a lot of business processes or most business processes inside of SharePoint, we have that opportunity here. And for those on-prem, those on 2013, 2016, we do have the classic UI available as well. I'm going to be demoing today in the modern UI, but we do have, for those, like I said, on-prem and the older iterations, we do have classic versions of the application available as well. Okay, so asset tracking. Asset tracking. A lot of our applications, you see this replicated. We replicate kind of this base process in our applications, and it's being able to tie a parent list to multiple child lists, right? So if the main source of information is the asset, we want to take all of these main lists inside of the application and tie that information back to the asset. Give you the ability to consume information easily from one consumable screen or from one form is the best way to say it. And that's going to be the main focus of the demo today. But let's kind of talk about asset structure, or how we can leverage the tool in different ways. So that's really it. I mean, I talk to a lot of different customers, a lot of different people who come in and look at the asset tracking tool either as a standalone or in conjunction with the help desk. And it's interesting the different use cases I've seen for it. So if we look at SharePoint, right, for those familiar with it or have worked with it in the past, or even those that are not really, I mean, our applications, yes, we have these reports and these tiles and dials like I was talking about during the lead-in on these SharePoint pages. But really our lists are SharePoint lists, our libraries are SharePoint libraries. And at, the base level, a SharePoint list is very equatable to an Excel spreadsheet, right? Instead of an Excel spreadsheet being saved on, on OneDrive or whatever, we have all of these different lists and forms tied together, like I said, to make it easily viewable and consumable. So that kind of use case of, hey, I'm managing and maintaining my assets inside of Excel. Can I, is this an easy transition? And the answer is unequivocally yes. We have an Excel to SharePoint import tool to make it easy to managing your assets from Excel into this tool. Or, if you're leveraging another third-party tool, can I move assets over and get it into the system? Again, the answer is easily yes. So moving from like an Excel-based system to a SharePoint-based system is a very easy transition. The other or more advanced options are also there, I guess is the best way to say it, right? So if you're you have an asset tracking tool already and you want to leverage that tool to connect to third-party databases, AP systems, finance systems, things like that, also a possibility. I'm going to touch on that as we dig through our forms. So that's kind of like, I kind of want to level set here. So the idea being, yes, we're going to cover the out-of-the-box product, but keep in mind that if you're looking at just transitioning from Excel to SharePoint or to an asset tracking application, all the way to, hey, I have this, this asset system needs to be the center point of all these other third-party tools that we use. Both are options. I'm going to talk through that today. Okay, so looking at an asset form. This is kind of my dashboard that I have set up here. I can see all of my assets. These are list views on my assets, active assets, software assets, tasks, things like that, as well as reports. Whoever set up this dashboard really loves their pie charts. We do have different options for reports too. I'll get into in a minute later, but it gives you an idea of what we can do from a reporting perspective, right? Assets by location, status, category, things like that. So let's talk about an asset. Actually, real quick, I don't know why I'm kind of nerdy, but I like these. This is a web part within Nitro Studio. So as I talk about this, I'm going to kind of going back and forth between Nitro and the front end of the application, right? So this is our asset tracking application. Here is our Nitro Studio for our asset application. That tool set I was talking about. Forms and workflows, we get a lot of love, but that list view web part, that list rollup web part, it gives us the ability to tab through different list views. It just makes it easy, again, to see everything in one screen. I don't have to reload, open up new pages. Sorry, shameless plug, I know, but I like it. I think it's cool. Okay, looking at an asset. We have this Dell laptop in our system, right? And one of the common things that I get asked about on asset in the asset system is, can I see the history of the asset, right? And to a lot of people, that means the audit history, the version history on an asset. And the answer is yes. You can come in here and you can see any changes made to the asset in its life with the company. The iterations, all the way from the first change down to the last. And this can be reported on, this can be exported, this can be viewed, right? Easily pulled out. Now another piece here, again, sorry, going back and forth to Nitro, but not sorry, it's this print manager piece. And printing inside of SharePoint, it's a headache, right? Anyone who's tried it before, anyone who's tried to print in Office 365, it makes it difficult, right? So what we have is the ability to create these rich text print templates to be able to pull information out of an asset or out of a list item and be able to print it in an easily printable format. So again, if you want to print and pull information out of asset or the entire list, that's also possible as well. Okay. So let's go into the edit version here of the form, right? If we talk about SharePoint forms, there's a display version and an edit version. So this first tab, this asset info tab, are pretty self-explanatory. It's the information associated to the asset, right? Like kind of the base level information of the asset, the ID, the title, the description. Again, this is rich text. So we can, pick and choose what this information says related to an asset. Now, asset type. This is one of our sub lists that feed into one of our quote unquote child lists that feed into the asset. So what's cool about this is that we can save information related to this asset type. Like if I change this to a projector, let's say, you can see the information updates, status, model, category, make, model number, right? As well as some tabs across the top have gone away. Not huge, but it does highlight some form flexibility we have based on permissions on forms, on tabs, based on certain column selections. So like if we're talking about finance and maybe we want this tab to be only available to the finance team and hidden away from everybody else, this ability right here or this functionality does give you the ability to do so, right? Based on different selections, based on different logins, or who's logged in, you can show different information on a form. Gives you a lot of flexibility. And also who this asset is assigned to. This could be tied into SharePoint user profiles, Active Directory, right? So you could just start typing in someone's name and assign them this asset, right? Say James. Actually, since Scott's on the call, we'll use Scott. Oh, Scott, sorry guys, I should mention this in the beginning. My colleague Scott Receiville is on the call with us today answering questions. So if you do have any questions, plug that into the questions box on the webinar page. Scott's going to answer those in real time as I go through the application. So I want to plug in Scott here. Here he is. He's assigned to this asset, but we can also do things from a granularity perspective in terms of like building, location, department that it's associated with. And you can see I have some generic drop downs in here. These drop downs are going to match your internal requirements. And one of the big pieces on this piece is, or really the forms in general, is that are these forms configurable? Can I change how this information is displayed or what metadata I'm capturing associated to my asset? Absolutely yes. It's part of that forms piece. I'm going to try to cover a little bit of this at the end of the webinar, so stick around. I'm going to cover forms briefly. But any information displayed here on the screen can be changed, can be matched to meet your specific requirements. And we are taping this webinar. We're going to send it out after the fact. So if you can't quite say all the way to the end, we will send that to you after the fact. Finance tab. So you can see here another connection with our vendor. In this case, it's Dell. So let's take a look at our vendors list here while we have it. So our list here, our vendors list. What we have now is this example of child to parent list, how we can connect these two together. So if we come in here and we look at Dell as a standalone, the vendor, we can capture information specific to Dell, right? Who the contact information is, any vendor notes, product offered, if we want to keep a service catalog, things like that, as well as our contracts and then the assets related to this particular vendor. So the idea being, coming back to that core concept of how do I tie all this information together? How do I keep it all within one screen? And this is the idea. Okay, the vendor's tied to it. Now I can see this asset in the related assets in the vendors list, and it's all I can pluck it from anyone. I can get to the asset from any of the major lists within inside of the system. Now, other things in finance, like depreciation method on this asset is either a production straight line, right? And then we can see we have a lot of these date columns here, right? Or date of decommission, purchase date, depreciation value, date sold, things like that. And a lot of the functionality of these date columns are going to be specific to the workflows associated with those date columns, meaning like, hey, I want to get a notification when this date of decommission is coming up. Or, hey, I want to get a notification when this contract service date is due, right? And that's something that we leverage with our workflow tool. Again, proprietary to ProCanyon. It gives you the ability to, sorry, wrong screen. I closed some stuff out here. To say, hey, 30 days before the date of decommission, I want to notify the responsible entity for this asset that it's coming due to be pulled from the system, right? Or 15 days, 5 days. You have the ability to choose that time cadence, and really on any of these date columns, to say, hey, when this date is coming up, X amount of days prior, X amount of hours prior, I want to notify people to let them know that something needs to be done with this particular asset. Image, computer, operating system, machine type, computer type. Now, a lot of this information out of the box is going to be plugged in, manually, right? Or pulled in from, imported into the system through that Excel spreadsheet I was talking about, that SharePoint, Excel to SharePoint import tool that we have that can start to populate some of this information. But let's talk a little bit about connections with other tool sets. SCCM, Landsweeper, Intune, Active Directory. If you're storing this information inside of those systems, absolutely possible to have that connected to, certain particular columns inside of this application, inside of this database. So if you want that sync to run on, a daily basis, once a month, a one time, all possibilities, whatever we can do to cut down on duplicate data entry, right? Or have that kind of, again, a common place to consume this information from, having it stored in an SCCM or then pulling it to Excel to build in this connection just makes it easy to have that information be pulled and reported on, all from this asset tracking application. Now, maintenance, support, preventative maintenance, right? Whatever we want to call it on this regard. You can see we have some tasks created here. Essentially, what we're doing is we're setting up notifications, and we're creating list items to track preventative maintenance against an asset type. So what we do is, if we go back to this first tab, I'm going to recall back to this asset type, right? We had some information stored against it, right? Status, model number, etc. What we're also storing against it is the maintenance schedule. So in this case, I think it's set up to every 3 months, every quarter, we have a maintenance going out against this particular Dell laptop. And all we have to do to fire off that workflow is enable the maintenance, and then this will happen automatically behind it. Populate the last maintenance day, maintenance costs, and create these tasks associated with it. Now, out of the box, it's one kind of date option, right? Whether it's yearly, quarterly, monthly, etc. But you can easily configure this to have multiple preventative maintenance schedules set up on an asset. Like I used to work in the car world, so I use vehicles a lot in this instance. But what I mean by that is, like, a lot of cars have an A service and a B service, right? So if you want to track an A service and a B service against an asset, you have that ability to set it up as well. Now let's talk about this task list. So again, going back to this parent-child relationship between, multiple lists. Right now we're creating these tasks in their own lists, maintenance task list, but it's being tied to the asset. So it pulls up its own form. Doesn't love me right now. Hold on a sec, guys. Sorry, I have a little bit of internet issues. Give me one sec here. Close some tabs out. There we go. Okay, so why separate? Ryan, keep talking about these different lists. Why break them up? Why separate them out, right? Well, the answer is this: it gives us the ability to maintain form flexibility, what metadata we're capturing associated to to this sublist, without having to affect the asset itself, the asset form itself. So instead of having this long, we already have quite a few tabs already. And so instead of having 15 tabs, 30 columns on each tab for each form, breaking them up into different lists gives us the ability to capture the metadata we want associated to a maintenance task, right? In this case, start date, end date, due date, who it's assigned to. But it also gives us the ability to keep a permission structure in place. Maybe you want certain people to only come in here and work on tasks or see tasks, but not have access to, like we talked about, the finance tab, or maybe the asset as a whole. You just want them to come in and knock off tasks. Building in this structure gives us the ability to do so. It keeps that permission structure in place and keeps our form load time in and running cleanly. Now, one other piece. So the preventative maintenance tasks are completely self-contained within the asset tracking system. Going back to that connection to other applications, whether it's our own, right, or whether it's another third-party tool, you can actually have these tasks create tickets inside of the ticketing system, right? So if you want this to create a help desk ticket as opposed to having to manage in the asset tracking tool, you absolutely can. Check in and check out. Here, let's run this workflow a little bit. I think this one's checked out. I'm going to check it in, and we're going to talk through this as I do this guy. So for those who have a loaner bank of assets, right, who have a set of assets that may be for trying to think of a use case here, drawing a blank, like maybe a sales staff, right? Who's traveling, they have a a tablet that they travel with, or they have a a set of phones that maybe change hands, material, literature, vehicles. That's a great example. It gives you the ability to check in and check out, and then keep a running history of the asset, of when the asset has changed hands. So when I check this out, again, you can see we have this grid view. It's this, I'm going to go back, sorry. It's this grid view. So it's this associated items grid. We call it associated items when we're linking multiple lists together. So this is the asset history list is its own list. I'm going to create a new entry in that asset history list. And I'm going to keep some information, I'm going to store some information against it. So maybe we'll check this out, Scott. The expected check-in date is a week from now, and Scott is traveling and needs laptop. Oh gosh, spell. Sorry. Okay. So now here we go. It runs that item for us. This is actually called a custom action, which we'll get into in a second. But now we come back, the status has changed. It can be checked in, right? And here's that line item for Scott to see that he has this asset, right? So now if we drill down into it, we can see the information related to this asset being checked out, who it's checked out to, the checked out date, expected check-in date, and then information associated with the checkout comments or check-in comments. So again, date column, we see this. So in our minds, we should think of, okay, workflow notifications. How often do I want to ping Scott when the check-in date's changing or when it's coming due? Right? Hey, this laptop's due today, it's due tomorrow, etc. That's also possible. Now, custom actions. I ran a workflow there. So that was a manually invoked workflow. That was, hey, I want to run this notification process. I want to assign this asset to Scott, and I want it to be at a time of my choosing. I want to hit a button. It's this piece here called custom actions. So the differentiation between these two, in my opinion, is that our workflow tool, our actions run on triggers, right? So it's when an item is created, when it's updated, when something changes, the workflow fires off based on that trigger. The custom actions have the same, exact feature set of the workflow tool, plus a few additional that can be ran at a time of your choosing. So it's kind of cool. It gives you a lot of options what we can do from a workflow perspective. Okay, so installed software. Let's talk about this list again, because this is one of our major lists here on the side, on our side nav. So let's talk about it. So again, if you're storing information related to software assets, applications, license counts, things like that in Intune or an Active Directory, again, that information can be pulled in. It can be reported on. See, I told you guys we had different reports. It's not just pie charts. Got some bar charts here. Got some line charts too. But as you can see, we have information associated to our software licenses, software assets. What they are, version, status, vendor, available licenses, right? Whether they're in compliance or out of compliance, purchase count, installed count, available count, right? All viewable from this screen. So pretty cool to come in and be able to see where your software assets stand. But how this applies to a hardware asset would be something like this. So let's say someone's coming on. We have an onboard coming on, and you get a set of tickets in the system to say, hey, I need to assign some assets to this new hire, right? Okay, great. Well, Ryan's coming on. We're gonna assign them. Oh, we assigned Scott. Scott's coming on. We're getting him this laptop, and I want to get him a DocuSign license. Okay. So what we have here is a submit action button. So submit action is a part of our forms piece, and typically when you see like a form inside of a system, inside of a SharePoint list or any of our lists, come in there, open this guy up. It's a save button, right? Oh, that's submit button. Well, it's okay. Typically we see a save button. I just got caught with my foot in my mouth there, guys, sorry. But typically it's a save button. I want to save this list item, update the information I changed and hit save. So the submit button gives us the ability to do something above and beyond just saving an item. So in this case, it's going to show us what we're doing here. We're going to run in this case, we are saving the item, but we're also running one of those custom actions I was talking about, one of those workflows to say, hey, are there available licenses for this DocuSign to add to this? Yep. Okay, so I want to make sure the license status is right, and I want to update the install count. So what we're doing is we're tying back to this list directly, so when we come back and look at our available licenses for DocuSign, it's going to update appropriately. Now that we know that that license is assigned, we can't over apply our licenses because we're going to run a check against that list. And now you can see the purchase count is 10, install count is 2, where it was just 1, right? So it gives you that ability to kind of eliminate moving too quickly, right? I think that's my biggest problem is I start moving too quickly. I don't fill things out, or I get move too fast and I forget to update my license count maybe. So instead I come in here and I see this as someone comes in and sees the purchase count is 10, install count is 9, good, I have one available. They try to install it, grab the license key, whatever it may be, and it's not available. Right? So when we come in here and we apply this, it eliminates that. It gives us I like to call them the warm and fuzzies as to make sure we have the appropriate licenses to assign them to hardware assets, etc. Okay. Last tab, related items tab. This is super common in a lot of our applications. So this is kind of like a snapshot of the asset's life with the company. So in this case, it could be manuals, warranties, contracts in this as the standalone asset itself. Okay. I am going to take you one other place here as I'm talking. I'm going to open up Teams. So for those in Office 365, apologize for those on-prem. This isn't super pointed to you guys just yet, or you could be using Teams client version for 2019. I'm not sure, but I just want to talk about a little bit about how the applications can be tied together and what we can do from a Teams interaction. So again, Nitro Studio has Teams integrations available. So as you can see here in one of my Teams channels here, one of my test ones, I have this IT application installed. And in this instance, it shows you that the application can be displayed within the Teams interface. So as this assets piece loads, let me talk about it. So like right now, I'm showing you the interaction within SharePoint, right? How a technician comes in and works an asset or a vendor or a software asset from the application interface inside of SharePoint. If we want to start working this within Teams, you absolutely can, right? If your technicians want to be in a Teams channel and work the applications in Teams, it's absolutely possible. I can't change the admin center, like the backend's always going to be, oops, sorry, let me click that, always going to be within inside of SharePoint, but how we interact with the asset moving forward, if you have Teams and you want to use it, you want to leverage it, you absolutely can. Just one piece here, this related items. Let me pull up this desktop real quick. So in this instance, like I was talking about, we have the manuals, warranties, contracts associated with the particular asset, right? In this instance, again, let's just bring it up real quick. Tickets, right? Manuals, asset history, change request problems associated with the asset, as well as the contracts. Again, they can be tied together, right? If you want to pull in and you want to populate, a sub-task list from your ticketing system, but leverage our asset tracking tool, possible. It just kind of highlights what we can do there with this associated items piece. Okay, so the last one here is this contract. So I'm just gonna touch on this real quick. Then we're going to talk about reporting, and then we're going to dig a little bit into Nitro itself. Okay, so contracts. Kind of like vendors. You're storing information related to a vendor. Say this is a contract that's been executed. I'm going to pull up this Dell master agreement here. A contract's been executed, and now as someone who's maintaining IT assets, or really assets in general, I would just want to see some information related to the asset. So maybe you want to store some documents related to the asset. You want to store the vendor, the title, invoice number, responsible entity. This is person getting notified when the contract's coming due. Value renewal options, etc. And then the assets related to it. Oh, it looks like we just have the one. That's funny. But here's our documents and here are our related assets. I click on this. We're right back where we started in our original asset form, right? So again, just the point being, a lot of the information that we want to keep is stored in different lists, assets, vendors, software assets, all rolling up to the asset. And we want to be able to get to any of the information as quickly as possible, and we absolutely can, and keep our form flexibility, keep our permission structure in place to make sure that the appropriate people see what we want them to see, intend them, or see what is intended for them to see. It's the best way to say it. Okay, reports. let's dig a little into Nitro. So you can see we have some reports that come out of the box. Asset by category, department here, our gamut of pie charts. But if you want to come in here and you want to configure reports, you want to change reports, you absolutely can. The cool thing about this here, as I bring it up, is that these reports can be, using our workflow tool, can be sent at a date and time cadence of your choosing. So if you want to send a set of reports to someone, maybe in management, or really just to see, kind of an overview of assets within inside the system every Monday at 9 a.m., that's possible. Now let's talk about changing a report here. Let's look at how easy it is we can configure. I say this a lot on my demos, and for anyone I see some existing customers here on this webinar. When I talk about reports, one of the main things I talk about is kind of my go-to line is, as long as the information lives within the system, we can report on it. And essentially what we do is we either have a list or a set of lists that we can report on. So you can have one or multiple lists roll up into a report, and then choose an X and Y axis to report on. So in this case, we foregone the Y axis, we're just saying contracts by count, right? But as you can see here, we have a lot of extra pieces that make it easy to interact with the reports, enabling automatic refresh, right? Every 30 seconds, the report refreshes on the page, so it keeps the information fresh, not static, right? You can select different views to report on, right? We have a bunch of different views on every list. If you want to report on a specific view, you absolutely can, right? Expiring contracts in 90 days. You can change your chart type, right? So maybe we don't want pie chart, do a funnel chart. I don't know if that's super pointed to this, but shows you what we can do from a reporting perspective. Maybe bar chart, probably better. There we go. And then the cool thing here too is you also have the ability that allows these to have drill downs. So like clicking on these and taking it to that specific view. So in this instance, if I was to click on IT, I could see all 10 contracts expiring for IT in the next 30 days. It takes me straight to that view, as opposed to having to navigate the list and filter on the list itself. So a lot of options there. Then you can do things like calculations, tool tips, things like that. And branding, if you want to have your own specific reports, how they're viewed. If you have your own script you want to build into the reports, you can as well. So a lot of functionality from the reporting tool, and they can be embedded really with anywhere inside the application. Okay. Now, Nitro Studio. So typically how applications break down, it's like end users, technicians, people working the assets in this case, and admin staff. So depending on who you are is going to depend on what your access is, right? Those role-based permissions. So in this case, you can see I have the cog pulled up here in the upper right-hand corner. This application admin center is only going to be available to those who are an admin, meaning who can come in here and configure the back end of the application, right? Quick links to change the lists, as well as access to the Nitro Studio. Now Nitro. All of our tool sets in Nitro, all of these pieces are list specific. So I get this question a lot, kind of, I'm gonna pull up forums here as I talk about it. I field a lot of questions about people maybe moving off InfoPath or using Power Automate, the Power Platform inside of 365. And it's a huge difference with what we do versus other third-party tools or what Microsoft does, is that's tied to a user, right? Which can be difficult to gauge from a pricing perspective, from a support perspective, as well as like from a change perspective, right? Say like, I've created this form in asset tracking in Power Automate, and I'm out sick. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, and something happens, and we need to get into the form. Well, now you need to know my login, you know my password. You need to know exactly what I did to create this form, right? You have to understand my logic to come in here and make a change to it, right? It's tied to that user. So I think it's a huge benefit to have it tied to the list, right? That also gives us a lot of flexibility, and we'll go down that path, but you get a consistent, have a consistent pricing model as well, right? So we're not charging you on a per user basis for our applications. I'll talk about pricing at the end, or we can have a separate pricing discussion if you'd like post webinar. But it gives us some freedom from, you know, pricing per user, pricing per flow, pricing per form. It gives us the ability to control that. And then again, if you're dealing directly with Microsoft, you have make something a Power Automate and something's wrong, you have an issue, you have to go to them for. And going to $1 trillion company at times can be difficult for support. I say that a little tongue in cheek. So you do have our team to rely upon to come in and ask any support issues of, if you so choose. The other option is, I want to understand Nitro, I want to come in and I want to own this application. Included with all our applications, we offer training. Another, if you want to take a quote unquote advanced training, Nitro Studio training, it's an in-depth training program on our Nitro Studio, as well as a bit of mentorship as well. So what that does is it comes in and familiarizes you with the backend tool set. Disclaimer, I could talk about the forms for probably 4 hours, right? There's a lot of cool features here. There's a lot of things that I find fun and entertaining, and when it comes to form design. So I'm going to try to condense it. Again, if you're interested and you want to know about forms or the assets or how forms apply to the assets, give me a shout. We'll set up a time to just walk through this, just you and I. We'll kind of talk about how this applies. But the point I made earlier about, hey, how can I add my own information here? Is that possible? You know, absolutely. So in my opinion, the forms tool breaks down into 3 different levels. How the form is designed, look and feel, UI, UX. SharePoint specifics, permissions, like we're talking about the flexibility in these tabs when a column is selected, all the way to developer-centric tools, calling out to using SQL data connection to call out to a database, pulling information from a database column into a SharePoint column, creating and maintaining JavaScript on a form. All possible, it just depends on how far you want to take it, right? So basic to, I want the backgrounds to be blue, I want the UI of the form to match my specific requirements. Let's find something not obnoxious here. There we go. All the way to, you know, and if you really want to take it and run with it, you can create your own form themes. Font family, font color, back color, column settings, tab and section color and settings. Very, very full function when it comes to design of the form. And then one piece here, if you do have CSS and you want to apply it to a form, you can add your own custom CSS here as well. Okay, so this is a SharePoint list, right? List specific. When it comes to display it on a form, what we're doing is, or with the information displayed on a form, we're taking columns from that SharePoint list and we're plugging it into the form in a format of that we want, right? So in this case, we have a tab form, tab layout with a bunch of sections dropped in, some 2-column layouts, things like that. See, we have a 2-column layout here versus a 3, you know, you could do a 3-column layout. You want 1, options and how it's displayed, okay? Hit apply, Ryan. There we go. If you want more tabs, no problem, very WYSIWYG. So the point being, delete that real quick before I forget, is how do I change this and make it make sense for me? Well, all of our columns on our SharePoint list are here under form controls on the left-hand side, okay? All of these guys here. So if I want to take any of these and I want to drag them into a tab, it's very WYSIWYG, it's drag and drop, right? Very easy. Now, these are only pre-existing SharePoint columns. What's nice about this tool is that we actually have hooks into the SharePoint list from the form designer. I like it because if I want to create any of the columns you see here, Nitro columns, whether it's lookup, associated items, can capture signatures, attachment columns, QR barcode columns, right, are all available, as well as creating standard SharePoint columns. So those familiar with SharePoint, it's like, oh, this is creating a column in a list, right? The idea being is like, now I don't have to leave the form design tool to create a column, right? So maybe I want, let's just call it Ryan's column, because I'm doing the demo. It will make it a choice column. Great. Create it. Okay. So I get this little warm and fuzzy, right? One of my favorite terms. That's the column's been created successfully. So now I know it's in the system here. So if I start typing for it, there it is. And I can plug it in wherever I want. Right? I want to see what that form looks like before I publish it to make sure the column is displaying the way I want it to. I can preview the form. There it is. Here are my different options. Looks great. Another piece here, those maybe working with InfoPath or just have the question about mobile responsiveness in general. You can see here in my preview form, I have it in a laptop view, I have it in tablet view, and I have it in an iPhone view or cell phone view for those on Android, right? So you do have the availability to, this form does have the availability to scale, okay? So that is browser-based. These are browser-based in this instance if you pull it up on a phone, tablet, or laptop, desktop. The other piece here is, the nice piece about this is that we're leveraging your existing SharePoint environment. So we get to ride the back of Microsoft a little bit. I use the Teams app and the SharePoint app a lot, you know, especially when we were traveling, you know, back when we could travel. Being able to update or open those apps on my phone, because we've gone through the stringent process of making our tools compatible with Microsoft, all of these are available in the apps available in the Microsoft space. SharePoint app, Teams app, right? If we're embedding it within Teams channels, all of this is available. So not only do we have those browser-based options I was showing in the preview form, I'm gonna close this real quick, sorry guys, but also have the ability to pull it up within the app itself inside of the SharePoint or Teams app. Super cool, super handy, just makes it easier to do my job. It just, again, external data columns, calling out to other third-party systems, form event actions, very specific to you know, our call, or when a column changes, updating the form, running some sort of script or querying some other list. Developer-centric tools if you want them. I'm not going to go too far into them right now. If that's something you're interested in, guys, just give me a holler, give me a shout, either in the question section, give me your contact info, and I'll set up a time to chat, or just shoot me a note at sales@crocanyon.com. I'll grab that and set up a time to walk through this. But as we come back and we kind of rolling back to the start here of this asset tracking tool, again, if we just kind of reiterate, if you're starting from an Excel spreadsheet, you know, very easy to pull in all the information you're tracking into Excel and plug and play it right into the asset tracking tool. You're ready to rock from day one. If you want to take that and expand upon it, connect to third-party tool sets, API connections, SQL database connections, pulling information in, absolutely possible. Right, so the idea again is it's this asset tracking, asset management tool where all of the information associated to your assets is in one common interface, whether it's all self-contained inside of SharePoint or has other hooks into third parties or database systems. It's all accessible, all available here inside of your SharePoint space, inside of your team space, inside of your farm, inside of your tenant, giving you the ability to leverage, you know, the platform you've already invested in inside of 365 or SharePoint on-prem. So guys, that I got through what I wanted to show you guys today. I'm gonna turn it over for questions now. I'm not sure if any questions were asked during the process, Scott, you want to talk about, but if you guys do have questions, now would be the time to shoot them in.
Yeah, I was looking at the questions, answering the ones that came in, and really making a clear difference that what we have is a network inventory tool is something that we work in conjunction with. A network inventory tool goes out and collects all the intimate details about every asset, and this is a huge amount of information. They bring back hot fixes, CPU, RAM, and then how much of it's really useful? Well, some parts of it are, of course, but it's a lot of information. But they don't give the kind of metadata that our system gives, is what we were trying to say, which is that you know all these things that Ryan's been showing you about the asset. You know where it's been used, what was checked in, checked out, is it in inventory, does it need repair, what about tickets, what about everything else that's around the asset that the network inventory can't give you. So that's where that question was going, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, even to expand upon that a little bit, it's not you don't want to give everyone access to that network finding tool, right? You maybe want a few users who are going out and managing and maintaining that, and you want people to be able to pull reports on it or see that information after it's been collected and added into the system.
That's right, and you get the whole ticketing aspect where you can tie this into a help desk, and you know what issue, you know what's been done on the what task and what tickets, what support issues have been done on the asset or group of assets. You also can group. That's another thing. I just used the word group, and that reminded me that you can group assets into different sets or kits or systems or whatever you want to call them. So it's a
Yeah,
lot.
that's a really good point.
You know?
Hmm. Yeah, like we work a lot with some state entities here, where Scott and I are based in California, and it's like, certain role types have a certain set of assets associated with it. So like a desk one has monitor, laptop, uh, keyboard, mouse, chair, desk, right? And that asset is its own standalone asset, but also has these sub assets associated with it, this group of assets. And there's a question about reports too, right, Scott? That just came in.
Right, right, yeah. Go ahead and you can address that one.
Yeah, can the reports be customized for comparison purposes? Examples for comparing one asset group with another. Yeah, conservatively, yes. I mean, I'd like a little bit more info there on what exactly the information we want to compare versus the others, but yeah, absolutely. If you're looking
Yeah,
at like an asset, quote unquote, asset category, maybe like one category versus the other and the information associated with them, 100%. We see that used a lot in our asset tools.
exactly. Part of the analytics is to decide, well, that kind of printer we bought is failing too often, so we want to, upgrade it, or something needs updating, and it's outdated. I mean, it's all about helping to manage it for more efficiency and better use of your time and money and resources in your assets. You know what's funny, Ryan? We see a lot of people who don't even have an asset tracking system at all. If at best a spreadsheet, if that, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. But spreadsheets is the most common piece I see with asset tracking.
Some people use an
Uh,
Access database, but it just
yeah.
just it seems like that's something to be really critically important to track these, which is really money. Each asset's money. If it walks out the door, or it's ill, you buy stuff you don't need, or it's poorly maintained, that's money. That's a waste of money and time.
Yeah, exactly. This is an interesting question that just came in. Is it possible to automate the export of reports other than through mail? Yeah, yeah. So you can easily, from the reports interface, you can easily pull a report out into PDF, PNG, print it, right? So if I want to pull this into PDF right here, I can. Okay, it's a good question. Um, you can export the entire list out to Excel for the data to be manipulated in other ways too if you want to report on it. But it's interesting. The question wasn't directly targeted at this, but when I say notifications a lot of the time, I mean email, right? I think most of us associate like a notification with an email notification. But for those on Office 365 and you're working with Teams and you want to continue to use Teams more heavily, um, let me pull up the assets list here. This is what I was talking about from that user triggered or based on like date and time column, right? Sorry, scheduled reports. Clicked on the wrong button. So let's say I want to schedule this report every Monday at 9 a.m. And the question was, other than email, yeah, so like I showed, we can pull it into PDF, but one of our actions is actually sending mail to a Teams channel. So you can take the information, the notifications that you're typically seeing inside of an email body, and you can put it into a Teams channel. Let me reopen this here. So taking that information, a rich text email template, and sending it directly to, let's say, IT or a particular Teams channel, that general channel that I have, and being able to populate information from the list item into the notification, as well as inserting reports as an attachment in that mail. Great question. I know I went a little further than probably needed, but it does highlight again what we can do from a Teams integration if you're using the 365 space. So yeah, absolutely pull them out, PDF, PNG, pull the whole list out, report on it. Print as the print manager obviously can be leveraged as a report as well. But if you want these to be connected to a Teams channel, they can. Absolutely.
That's right. The print manager is a very powerful tool for like that's. I don't think Power Platform even has a good print capability, and we have a very sophisticated one. You print a list of assets. Say you want a list of
Mhm.
assets that need maintenance, or have a or are in inventory, or even what you are. In fact, if you integrate with our purchase system, you can see what assets are coming in, on order and
Mhm.
things like that. And or you can do it print out an individual item and have a whole bunch of details about that item.
Exactly.
And we were
Exactly.
even doing stuff where we were monitoring people's access to certain assets, and things like that. And, it's interesting things you can do if you need to for your asset management requirements.
Mhm.
Very flexible.
Agreed.
Oh,
Was
here's
there another
another
question
question.
there?
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Check that question out, Ryan. Go ahead.
So does this product access uh, assets product automatically via network? And if so, does it assume everything is on a local network?
That's that same
No.
issue with the network inventory tool.
Mm,
The network inventory tool, that's another limitation of it. I'm glad the person pointed that out, that the network inventory tool only gathers what's plugged into the network. But our asset management can record everything that you put in, because if something's on order, something's in inventory, something's not connected to network, all that stuff can be tracked in our system. We don't rely on the network inventory tool to provide us all the information needed. It's an adjunct to our system and a
right.
nice core, what do you call it? Ancillary system to have in place, right?
Exactly.
So that is a limitation. If that's a network inventory, only pick up what's actually on it. Let's see, what's this? Number of tech logins to access asset management? No, right? There's your idea
Yeah,
here,
no.
Andy.
Yeah, hey. We do not limit the amount of technicians inside of this application.
Eh,
It's inside of your SharePoint space. So we just real quickly, I'll cover the pricing structure. If you have more questions about pricing, let me know. But we charge per application, per instance. So what I mean by that is the application has a cost associated with it, and then you choose who has access to it. So we don't charge on a per technician or per user basis when it comes to the applications. Once they're inside of your SharePoint environment, it's up to you on who has access to it, who can see and manage and maintain, manipulate the data.
Right, you can set permissions on the people too,
Mhm.
different permissions for different accounts. And people do that all the time, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Scott got that question there. It's pricing related to the amount of assets that are managed. No, again, it just comes back to the um, flat cost of the application itself.
Now, Blake is asking about connecting to external databases such as SAP. So, assuming SAP well, there's two ways we can connect to external systems, either using a web service like a REST API or whatever SDK they have available, very easy to do, or we use the external data column inside of our Nitro Forms. Our Nitro Forms, yeah, there's a web service there, or the external data column. External data columns more or less set up for connecting to SQL or actually ODBC databases. So
Mhm.
as long as you have the connection string and the proper permissions and the right query, you would use this external data column to do that. Now, what we can also do in addition to the external data column is write JavaScript that does the same kind of thing too, because under advanced, there's a custom JavaScript you can add to our forms. So there's the external data column, there's the JavaScript, custom JavaScript that's part of Nitro Forms, and there's also what Ryan was showing you about the web service inside of the SharePoint, I mean, our Nitro workflows and our Nitro custom actions. So quite a number of ways that you can connect, and it's all a matter of what the external system allows, and how to get that data. Each one's a little different, SAP or
Mhm.
SCCM. We do a lot of connections with SCCM. That's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Plan Sweeper,
Intune's
Pocket,
popular now. Yeah.
Intune, yeah.
Yeah.
Even
Um,
Apple. Remember Apple? We were doing that one with Apple. What is it? The Apple database.
AirWatch.
AirWatch. Yeah, right. We did that for
AirWatch.
somebody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a school system down in Southern California. So the product requires a user to utilize toolkit to set things up particular use. Is there an out-of-box app that's ready to go? Larry, the application that I showed you guys today is the out-of-the-box product, right? I think realistically, like when we talk about these tool sets, depending on your requirements, these out-of-the-box tools will get you 80 to 90% of the way there based on what your set of requirements are. In terms of configuration that lasts to 10 to 20%, it's typically a combination of uh, knowledge transfer, training, us to you versus configuration services versus development time internally on your staff. So the out of the box product is ready to rock from day one. In terms of like, setup, configuration, drop downs, things like that, can be done by our team. We train you guys, try to train you guys to do it internally. And then if the question is pertaining to like connection setups like out of the box connections, so like SCCM, Landsweeper. We do have some out of the box functionality for an SCCM and a Landsweeper and an Intune setup that we adhere to. Any other ones outside of those three and how they pertain to assets would be requirements specific to your organization, right? So like if you had like in the example was SAP, right? If you have an SAP connection, we would need to analyze that, see what information that you want to push and pull from the system into the asset tracking tool, right? That would be specific to you guys. And then for SCCM, you can see if you're interested, we do have a help site, a lot of good information related to our products, but you can talk, it kind of walks you through what a base SCCM integration looks like with Crow Canyon.
There's one other thing I want to point out, Ryan, that it may be a relation to the SAP. If you go to our Nitro workflows, we can connect to Microsoft Flows or Power Automate, and sometimes the Flows or Power Automate have pre-existing connectors to external systems, right?
That's
so
a good point.
Yeah, you can explain.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, they changed it. It used to be Flow. They just changed it last week. So yeah, absolutely. Microsoft Power Automate has a lot of out-of-the-box connectors for large organizations, Oracle, Salesforce, and we can write on the back of those connectors that Microsoft's already created. Again, like I talked about with the apps, the SharePoint app, the Teams app, writing the back of Microsoft because it's installed inside of 365 or SharePoint. We can leverage those out-of-the-box connectors to make the tool better and easier to use, not have to spend as much development time to get it up and running specific to your requirements.
Yeah, we've even written flows that do that, so I mean, it's not like we're adverse to using Power Automate. If it's a tool in the toolkit, we'll use it, to make the connection that's necessary.
Yeah, what was the webinar you did? Nitro Studio and Power Automate, best friends forever, wasn't that?
Yeah, BFF, best friends forever.
Yeah.
That was a funny one. Yeah, Nitro, because we're not in conflict or with them. And the other thing about the what you're saying about the program out of the box, people, like you said, people can use it right out of the box and they don't have to do any of the back end Nitro Studio stuff. We just, being like Ryan said, sort of geeky, we wanted to show that all these capabilities, look at all these cool capabilities under the covers. It's like showing open up the hood of the car, look, it's got this engine, it's got this neat turbo something around the,
Right.
But you don't have to drive the car, right? Or buy the car. It's like that.
Scott and I just happen to be very passionate about Nitro Studio. Yes. But yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's in a lot of these situations, I talk with people on our kind of prelim calls or going into deploying the application. If you're not sure how much or how little you want to use the product outcomes out of the box day one. And the nice thing about having Nitro Studio and having that option is that it can always be changed. Just because it's deployed one way day one, it doesn't have to say that way day 6, week 6, month 6, year 6, right? You can always make changes. You can always configure the application. You can always make it grow. It can always grow with you. Importing. Hey, John. Importing options. Yeah, we have the Excel, the SharePoint import tool. You can pull information directly into an Excel or from an Excel list into our assets list. And then we can also import assets from one of those databases that we talked about. So SCCM, etc. The other option, the non-fun option, is manual entry. But if you do have it or can get it into Excel or one of those database connections, that would be the preferred method of data entry.
Okay, I'm sending that to all. Let's see, barcoding. Yep, barcoding. We could talk about that.
Yeah, barcode is interesting. It's a question that pops up a lot about asset tracking, and we offer the software, right? So we don't have like a barcode scanner included in our system, right? We just don't sell hardware. We're not in the business of selling hardware. We've been asked about this a lot recently, and for one of our customers, we've been doing barcode scanning through. We've all seen it, right? You go to a restaurant now in this post-COVID world, and they have a barcode link. Your camera picks it up, and it directs you straight to a menu, right? Menu item, a browser with that restaurant's menu, right? Very similar principle can be applied to the asset tracking tool if you want, right? You scan the barcode on your phone, it pulls up the barcode in a browser base and in a browser with the form I've been showing, right? This main form. That's an option. There's a lot of options. It kind of goes back to that conversation I was talking about earlier when it comes to integrations. If you want a barcode scan, it's something we need to sit down, chat about, hammer it out. What does barcode scanning mean to you? How far do you want to take it? And we'll talk about options from there.
Yeah, one person's asking for case studies, and I said, well, we'll do that offline, not during this
Mhm.
call, but you'll
Yeah.
contact directly by email or set up a call or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Happy to put you in contact with folks who have used it, who are using it. You talk to them directly, or we do have some case studies related to asset tracking as well.
We have that one with the critical essential assets of the largest nuclear power plant up in Canada
Mhm.
on Lake Huron, Bruce Power. That's up
Right.
on our website. That's critical essential assets. They have to maintain according to certain government regulations regularly. They're using it to maintain those assets to the standards that are required by the nuclear power industry. So it's probably a really good example, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. Well, we are just creeping over the 2 o'clock mark for those on the East Coast, or 3 o'clock mark, 3 o'clock mark for those on the East Coast, 12 o'clock here. So we are in the process of wrapping up, guys. If appreciate all the questions for those who stayed after and asked them. This has been really fun. 20 minutes for Scott and I. We love to answer questions. If you have more, shoot us a note. And then for those who have asked questions, we promise follow-ups. We'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. I would love to hear from you. Love to do a private demo, and yeah, keep this thing rolling. Scott,
All
anything
right.
else you can think of?
No, thanks, Ryan. And like you said, we'd
Mm,
be very glad to hear from anyone and show you the system live in person and take more questions. We actually like getting these questions because it really
mm,
challenges us to show what we have and make sure it's industrial standard, the leading
exactly.
standards in the Office 365 SharePoint world. All right, Ryan, thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
And thank you everyone for attending.